Now, I want to tie the map in to the store and inventory, but before we leave this idea of missions, I need to cover a few things. This is built on a WordPress platform and it's tied to a database. So every student has a blog. Every response to every mission goes into each student's respective blog. As a teacher, I can look at the posts that were submitted for specific missions, or go to the reader. You may have noticed this number changes. This is the current count of unread blog posts. And over the course of the year, there have been probably 10,000 responses by now, because each student builds up a body of work over the course of the year. They don't lose track. I don't lose track, which is a wonderful thing. And then because it's tied to a database, I can head to the clipboard, and by clicking this, I can see which students have attempted this, not attempted it, completed it, had it reset, had their loot boosted or reduced, all the different ways that this individual mission has all the data associated with it. And conversely, on the clipboard, I can see an overview, class-wide, specific students, specific periods, specific missions, specific date ranges. It's database. It's tapping into the information using different filters we've built in order to make this as efficient as possible. It's extraordinary. And then when you tie in the store and inventory to the map, you start to see the bigger picture of how this can truly impact the way curriculum is delivered and accessed by the players. Maybe just hearing about access to the database isn't enough. I'm on the clipboard and I'm in the missions tab. I've sorted for a specific student, me, and a specific mission. And from this point, I can look at the work that's submitted. I can reset it, turning that mission red, and it removes all the loot automatically. I can give the student feedback, including feedback I've pre-made. And here's one where a student hasn't spent enough time, and I can just tell them because the elapsed time is also listed. But maybe it just needs revision. And here, they're called by name. Their display name is what pops up. And then I can deduct a percentage of the loot, a custom amount. I can add loot. I can add inventory items. And the inventory items are all sorted. This is so powerful, and also include an email message to them. But for right now, we'll just leave it at that, and let's go back to a percentage of the loot, and we'll just take 50% away. And then I'm not going to send an email in this case. I'll just go ahead and revise that. So now the player's going to have some information on their map. But before we leave this, I just want to show you, if we take this sort out, now I've got every single mission this player has done, and you can see there's quite a bit, and there's 50 posts on this page, or 50 results. You can change that. You can alter it right here. But I can also see the stats panel for this player, the blog post, the map, personal information, send an announcement directly to them. This works class-wide as well. We have the other options up here. But when you view the map, now this is one of the admin's greatest tools, is to see individual players' maps, and then you can toggle through. I'm the last one here, so that's why there's only a previous. Normally there's a next as well. But you can go to a class and toggle through your class maps and be able to see at a glance what they have and have not done. If you need to look deeper into their content, you now see that you've got those options as well. But the stats panel is pretty awesome. All messages that have been sent to them, the missions exchanged, history of every click, the inventory. I've mentioned inventory before, and the idea that you can stack these, you can limit them, they can be used in the store. That sound was my loot going down. And just understand that this is so nuanced and powerful. It just makes my job so much simpler. Because I had this page open while I was working in the admin account, the sound that you heard in that video was this message being delivered. So it's this real-time interaction with the students, and when it happens in the classroom while they're sitting there, it's a great way to start a conversation. Hey, Scotchko, what do I need to change? And that interaction also leaves a visible trail out on the map as well, where the players can get that information as well as it's accessible to them in their blog. And also, your eye may have caught this motion over here. We have this great way to remind players that, hey, this is coming due. You might want to pay attention to it. A couple other tools we have here for the players is, hey, how much loot? How much loot is on the map? How much have I earned? And the totals are all affected by the modifier, including the nerfs that are involved. And how you employ this modifier in your classroom can be a great behavior tool, or it can be a wonderful way to encourage students to think long-term, especially if this modifier starts out very low at the beginning of the year and you provide avenues for students to grow that modifier through their engagement with your content. And also there's the, hey, how much time did I spend? And sometimes students will say, whoa, you can see I only spent 1:26 on this mission, and there's 2 videos in there. Oh, Scotchko knows I cheated. Yeah, well, that information is also on the clipboard and much easier for me to access when I sort by time spent on mission. Before we leave the map behind, a few things I want to share. And yes, number one, my rubric is far different than most teachers, and it's tied to classroom policies and expectations. But it boils down to something pretty simple. And if you have a student who does those 4 things and that student doesn't learn, maybe it's not entirely the student's fault. Most teachers don't want to accept that part of the equation. But there's a response here. And this response is pretty straightforward. It's got a word count limit, and the prompt is in the video. So all of this is customizable. Let's get in here and edit to see that. If you want player interaction and them to respond in some way, under Content and Rewards, the call to action is where you go. You check the specific type of check for understanding you want, and then you can see some of the options here. What type of response do you want? In this case, it's just text and minimum words. If I explained in the video I want them to add media, I could add a question and specifically say, I want a file and I want that file type to be an image, and that would require them to submit one of these types of images. And on with the different responses you have, you can go ahead and fine-tune this and continue to add questions if you want. Now, adding the loot and perhaps suggesting a minimum time on task is another option, but for right now, I just want to focus on add stage. The idea that you're not limited to one stage, that a new stage can have different content, different calls to actions. You can continue to add stages, but which is more effective? One very long mission that's complicated and has a lot of stages, or perhaps a shorter mission that has separate missions nested within it to allow the players to make progress and feel like they're accomplishing something rather than constantly working on this one endless mission. Chunking up your material in this way provides additional inspiration to some kids who are enthralled with the gameplay. A student who doesn't care about the gameplay and just wants to learn, none of this gets in their way. And all of it provides the breadcrumbs and that portfolio. I mean, this is called blog here. It could be called portfolio if you wanted. It really is a compendium of every single thing they've done. I've switched to my pitiful level 1 account in order to show you bonus loot and the idea that as a student works through, provides their response, can save right here if they're not done, but clicks complete, and then they get their loot, but then there's this idea that bonus loot exists. And here it's just straightforward. It is just one item. But in the settings for bonus loot, you can compile drop rates and drop rare items, store items, inventory items, extra time, extra loot, all kinds of different things that could be awarded based on the percentages that you set. And you can create a collection of different presets so that when you add the bonus loot, you just select from a drop down of presets and all those calculations are done for you. And then the student encounters it here, and there could be a list of items that they could possibly get, which makes this a lot more fun. My Gameful partner in this endeavor often says inventory is where teachers should start. What competencies do you want the kids to have? What do you want them to learn? How can you mark those milestones? And that's a great way to look at this. As a gamer, I think about gathering professions and crafting professions and alchemy and all the different ways that we can spice up the learning experience. And just like the missions, it's you add a new category here, and these are different categories. And then once you're in the category, you add a new item. You have the ability to clone the entire category, to clone individual items. You don't have to provide your own images. We have banks of libraries of images that are at your fingertips that we've already paid for so that our users have access to lots and lots of content. But the idea that you can supply all these opportunities, including, like I talked about, my leveling system working through the periodic table, and they get these cool badges. Now, these badges I've set as discoverable so that when a student goes to their stats panel and goes to that first tab, all they see are the badges that they've earned. Hey, I don't have any consumables. What are those? How do I earn those? And on. There is so much you can do with that, but then in conjunction with the store. And in the past, we didn't have this opportunity. It was more mundane. And in a regular year, students actually would run to the classroom to check in before the bell to get their early bird. And these were in a very constrained time period from the point at which, well, for first period, they had a long time to check in, but second was the gap between first and second period and before that final bell rang. So in my room, kids were logged in and working for the most part before the bell because they wanted that early bird. And if they were on time, and just like the missions, you could reorder these things, then they bought the on time because this was no longer available because the time had expired. And then if they're late, they actually had to buy a tardy. Kids hate this. This became a real motivator for kids to show up on time. However, now we have this mechanic where you can mix and match inventory items and currencies to blend different things to either limit access by an inventory item they have or so much currency, or actually consume the item to generate something brand new. It would take days to get further into this and really explain all the options and how you can dress up the store and make it look so much better. But for right now, if you've wrapped your head a little bit around how all the admin tools give you access to everything you need right at your fingertips, even though there's so much data here, you can find anything in seconds. And the ability to craft these experiences where students dive deeper into little chunked content while they level up, and you have access to see their maps and to check their progress at a glance. This makes my job, my life, so much more efficient and effective. And like I said before, for the kids that dig the game aspect of this, it's a motivator. And for others that just want to learn, it doesn't get in the way. And for the corner cutters, they find out those corners have sharp edges because they leave digital footprints with date and time stamps everywhere. And there's really no getting away with it, and there's no arguing with the database.